The headline that finally broke me wasn't the one calling me a thief. It was the one calling me a danger to children. It sat there on my phone screen like a loaded weapon, shared tens of thousands of times, pasted into neighborhood groups, church pages, alumni circles, and the kind of local forums where people say, just asking questions right before they ruin a stranger's life. It showed my face in harsh lighting, my voice chopped into fragments, my hands shaking as if I were either furious or drunk. I was neither. I was 74 years old, a grandfather, and I had just disinherited my 2 adult children from $15 million. 2 days later, they decided to disinherit me from my own name. They wanted the world to believe I'd become some kind of monster hiding behind money and age. They wanted the story simple. Rich old man punishes family out of spite, torments his children, hoards his fortune, and lashes out because he can. What they didn't know was that I'd spent my entire working life building stories for a living. Not fiction, not entertainment. Stories that moved people. Stories that built trust. Stories that made strangers feel like they had known you forever. I wasn't famous. I didn't need to be. I had something far more useful. I knew how the public mind turns. And I still had the keys to doors my children didn't even realize existed. If you're imagining this as some petty feud fought with vague posts and angry comments, stop right there. This wasn't that kind of war. Ethan and Marissa didn't just want my money. They wanted my isolation. They wanted my grandchildren's loyalty. They wanted my friends to stop answering my calls. They wanted caregivers to quit. They wanted my bank to be concerned. They wanted the county to check on me. They wanted me frightened enough to sign something, and they were close. Because when the first wave hit, it felt like drowning. It began on a Wednesday morning with an email from my foundation's board. We need to speak immediately. Then the bank called asking if I was under duress. Then my neighbor across the street, who had borrowed my ladder every spring for 10 years, stood at his mailbox and stared at my house like it had grown teeth. By noon, a camera crew sat outside my gate. By nightfall, someone had put my address online with a message that read, "Keep your kids away from this house." I sat at my kitchen table, the same oak table my late wife, Lillian, used to set with linen and quiet pride, and I watched my children's faces on my screen. My son looked grave and wounded. My daughter looked brave and exhausted. And they said, together, that they were terrified of me. They told the world they had to cut me off for their safety. They did not mention the $15 million. They did not mention the clause in my will that redirected every cent into a trust for my grandchildren and a scholarship fund for children in the county foster system. They did not mention the police report I filed after I found forged checks in my wife's hospice paperwork. They did not mention the night I woke up and heard Ethan in my study whispering, "Just sign it, Dad," while his hand slid my pen across the desk like I was some senile animal he could train. They didn't mention any of that, because they weren't trying to tell the truth. They were trying to replace it. And that's when I understood something I should have understood years earlier. My children didn't just want me gone. They wanted me rewritten. So I did what I have always done when someone tries to rewrite me. I opened a file. I began at the beginning. And I planned my response with the same cold patience they mistook for weakness. Because here's the part they never considered. They were not the only ones who knew how to use social media. They were just the only ones who thought it was a toy. I treated it like a weapon, and I have never been careless with weapons. My name is Thomas Kessler. I am a grandfather 4 times over. I built a regional logistics company from one truck, and a contract I almost didn't win because the banker didn't like my handshake. I sold it at 64, just after Lillian's second cancer came back with the kind of cruelty that makes you believe the universe has a personal grudge. I buried her 3 years ago. If you've never watched your life partner shrink from pain medication and quiet resignation, you might not understand why certain betrayals land like a physical blow. Lillian wasn't just my wife. She was the witness to my entire adult life. When she died, the house went silent in a way I still can't describe without feeling my throat tighten. Ethan and Marissa were there at the funeral. They cried loudly. They hugged longer when people were watching. Later at home, after the casseroles arrived and the sympathy calls slowed, they stayed. Not for me, for the vacancy. At first they said it was temporary. My son Ethan was between projects. My daughter Marissa was restructuring her life. They talked about family as if it was a soft blanket they were placing around my shoulders. What they were really doing was moving in. They took over my calendar, my medications, my mail, my accounts for safety. They replaced the housekeeper with someone Marissa trusted. They began filtering my calls. They began sitting in on meetings with my attorney and my financial advisor with the kind of firm smiles people use when they're pretending they belong in the room. I didn't stop it fast enough because grief makes you slow, and because old men are trained to believe their children, even when their instincts scream. I want you to understand this. I did not disinherit them because they were imperfect. I did not disinherit them because they disagreed with me or hurt my feelings. I disinherited them because I discovered, by accident, that they were already spending money that wasn't theirs. It began with a hospice invoice. I keep paper files. I've never trusted a life built entirely on screens. Lillian used to tease me for it. I was cleaning out the office one afternoon when I found a folder labeled Medical Final. Inside were 2 invoices that didn't match. Same provider, same dates, different amounts. One paid, one outstanding. I called the provider myself and asked for a ledger. The woman on the phone was polite but confused. "Mr. Kessler," she said, "your account has been settled. There's no outstanding balance." Then she hesitated. "And there was a refund issued." "A refund?" I repeated. "Yes, a reimbursement for an overpayment. It was processed 6 weeks ago." "Where was it sent?" She read an address that wasn't mine, a post office box across town. My hands didn't shake yet. Not then. I was still in that stage where your brain wants to believe it's a mistake because the alternative is too ugly. I drove to the post office. I asked questions. I made calls. By the end of the day, I had a list of 3 other refunds, 2 duplicate payments, and 1 cashier's check that had been deposited into an account I didn't recognize. I sat in my car in the parking lot, staring at the steering wheel until the leather blurred, and I felt something rise in me that wasn't grief. It was clarity. Ethan and Marissa weren't helping me. They were harvesting me. That night I didn't confront them. I didn't shout. I didn't threaten. I did what Lillian always said I was frighteningly good at when I wanted answers. I listened. I waited until they thought I was asleep. Then I walked barefoot to the top of the stairs and stood in the dark hallway like a piece of furniture, invisible in my own home. Downstairs, in my study, their voices were low and urgent. "She's going to run the numbers," Marissa hissed. Ethan answered, "It doesn't matter. He won't know what he's looking at." "He keeps folders," she said. "He keeps everything." There was a pause. Then Ethan said softer, "If he pushes, we go with Plan B." "What's Plan B?" Ethan exhaled, impatient. "We make it about safety, about instability, about how he's changing. People believe that. Everyone expects old men to rot in place. We say he's confused, angry, unpredictable. We say we're scared." My mouth went dry. Marissa gave a small laugh. "He won't fight. He hates conflict." Ethan replied, "He hates embarrassment more. He won't want the neighbors talking." They were discussing my life like it was a business problem, like I was a malfunctioning machine. I went back upstairs without making a sound, closed my bedroom door, and sat on the edge of the bed where Lillian used to sleep. I didn't cry. I made a decision. The next morning I called my attorney, Harold Wexler, and asked for a private meeting. No family, no help, just me. Harold had known me for 30 years. He didn't treat me like a fragile antique. He looked me in the eye and asked one question. What happened? I slid the hospice folder across his desk. Then I said, "They're going to try to take everything, Harold. Not when I'm dead, now." Harold read in silence. When he finished, he didn't sigh or give me a lecture. He said, "Do you want to protect them, or do you want to protect what you built?" I answered, "I want to protect my grandchildren." Because that was the part that kept me from burning the house down in rage. Those children, my grandchildren, were innocent in this. They were being raised inside a story my son and daughter were already teaching them. Grandpa is difficult. Grandpa is selfish. Grandpa is dangerous. I wasn't going to let my legacy become a warning label. We rewrote the will. We moved assets into trusts. We built legal firewalls that couldn't be accidentally signed away at the kitchen table. And yes, it was $15 million when you counted property, securities, and the last portion of the company sale that had been structured over time. I left Ethan and Marissa small, symbolic sums. Enough that no one could claim I'd forgotten them, not enough to reward betrayal. The rest went to the grandchildren's trusts, with strict disbursement controls. It also went to my foundation, to my church, and to the scholarship fund that Lillian had begged me to start before she died. Harold filed the paperwork. Then he looked at me again. "You need to be prepared," he said. "This kind of person does not accept boundaries. They attack them." I nodded. I believed I was prepared. I was wrong. Because I expected anger. I expected threats. I expected tears. I did not expect them to try to erase me. 2 days after Ethan and Marissa learned they were cut out, the first post appeared. It was on Marissa's account, a glossy photo of her holding my youngest granddaughter in a sunlit kitchen. The caption was soft and tragic. It talked about hard decisions, protecting the children, and finally speaking the truth. Within hours, Ethan posted a video. He sat in his car, eyes red, voice carefully strained. He said he'd been silent for years out of respect, but he couldn't anymore. "He's not who you think," Ethan said. "My father has changed. We've tried to get him help. We've tried to keep things private, but he's punishing us. He's trying to control us with money, and he's unpredictable." The word landed hard. Unpredictable. That's the word people use when they want police officers to show up tense. It's the word they use when they want a judge to lean forward. Then Marissa went live. I watched her on my phone while I sat alone in my living room, the curtains drawn. She cried on camera, not messy crying, controlled, cinematic. She said, "I'm scared he's going to hurt someone. He's threatened us. He's threatened to take the kids away. He's isolating. He's manipulating." And in the comments, strangers wrote things like, "Report him. Check on the kids. Old men like that are monsters." I felt my stomach turn, not because of what they said, but because of how quickly they believed it, how eagerly they wanted a villain. That's what social media does. It doesn't ask for truth, it asks for emotion. And my children were giving it a feast. Within 48 hours, the story wasn't just online. It was in my mailbox. Anonymous letters. "We know what you did. You can't hide behind money." One envelope contained a printed screenshot of Marissa's live stream with the word "monster" written across my face in thick marker. Then the calls began. My bank, my doctor, a local reporter, a representative from my foundation, a woman from Adult Protective Services. The first time the county worker came to my door, she was young enough to be my granddaughter. She held a clipboard and tried to smile. "Mr. Kessler," she said, "we've received concerns." "From my children," I said flatly. She blinked. "We're required to check." I let her in. I offered coffee. I showed her my clean house, my organized files, my medication list, the letter from my physician confirming my cognitive health. I answered every question. When she left, she looked uncomfortable. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "This happens." "Does it?" I asked. She hesitated. "More than people think." After she drove away, I stood at my window and watched her car disappear down the street. My children had taken one of the most powerful instincts in any society, the need to protect the vulnerable, and pointed it at me like a spear. They weren't trying to argue about money. They were trying to put me in a cage built from public concern. And then they made their first real mistake. Because they got greedy. On the third day, Ethan sent me a text. No greeting, no softness, just a demand. "We can stop this. Sign the documents. We'll tell them you got help." I stared at the message until my eyes ached. Stop this. As if they'd accidentally started a fire and could politely put it out once they got what they wanted. I didn't respond. I forwarded it to Harold. Then I did something I had not done since Lillian died. I called an old friend. His name is Marcus Avery. We met 25 years ago when my company hired a small agency to help with a state contract campaign. Marcus wasn't a loud man. He didn't sell you dreams. He sold you strategy. Later, he built his own digital consulting firm, quiet, discreet, deeply connected. When he answered the phone, he didn't say hello. He said, "Thomas, I saw it." "Then you understand," I replied. Marcus exhaled. "I understand what they're doing," he said, "and I understand what it will cost you if you let them." "I'm not letting them," I said. There was a pause. Then Marcus's voice sharpened. "Tell me you haven't tried to fight them publicly yet." "I haven't." "Good," he said, "because the first rule is simple. You don't argue inside a story someone else controls. You build a new one." I sat back in my chair. The house was quiet. The kind of quiet that makes you feel like you're the last person alive. "What do I do?" I asked. Marcus didn't hesitate. "You gather proof. You build a timeline. You prepare your release. And you do it in a way that doesn't make you look like you're scrambling. You need to look steady." Steady, that word mattered, because Ethan and Marissa were painting me as unstable. Any emotional response from me would become evidence. So I became a stone. I began collecting everything. I pulled phone records. I pulled bank statements. I pulled hospice invoices and refund logs. I requested copies of the original checks. I found the forged signatures. I printed the text messages. I saved the voicemails. I labeled files with dates and times like I was building a case. And the deeper I dug, the uglier it became. In the hospice paperwork, I found a change of contact form I never signed. It listed Ethan as the primary contact. It listed Marissa as the authorized financial representative. And it listed a P.O. box as the mailing address for all correspondence. I remembered Lillian on her last good day, her hands trembling as she tried to sign a get-well card for a neighbor. I remembered Ethan hovering near her, smiling too wide, saying, "Just let me handle it, Mom." I remembered Marissa helping with her medication schedule. Then a memory surfaced, sharp as a blade. Lillian whispering to me, 2 weeks before she died, "Thomas, don't let them turn me into a transaction." I had promised her I wouldn't, and I had failed to see it in time. The truth hit me in stages, each one colder than the last. This wasn't a sudden betrayal sparked by disinheritance. The disinheritance was me catching up. They had been running this operation for years. When Marcus came to my house on the 5th day, hood up, cap low, careful, he didn't start with a pep talk. He started with one question. "Are you ready to lose people who never mattered?" I frowned. "What does that mean?" "It means some people will believe your kids no matter what you show them," he said. "Because your kids have already given them what they want, a villain. And some people will turn on you because it's easier than thinking they were wrong." I swallowed. "I'm 74, I said. "I don't have time for games." Marcus's eyes were steady. "This isn't a game," he replied. "This is a public execution attempt. If you don't control the outcome, they will." Then he opened his laptop on my kitchen table. He showed me something that made my fingers go numb. A network map, pages, groups, accounts, and community voices that were all sharing Ethan and Marissa's story in coordinated waves. Some were real people, mothers in parenting groups, concerned neighbors, former classmates. Some were anonymous accounts. Some were newly created community safety pages with no history before my children's posts. Marcus tapped the screen. "Your son hired someone," he said. "This isn't just them being emotional. This is planned messaging." "How much?" I asked, voice flat. Marcus didn't answer immediately. When he did, it was quiet. "They're using money you built," he said. "They're paying for your downfall with your own foundation's credit card." My chest tightened. "What?" He slid another document across the table. A statement. Charges I hadn't noticed because Marissa had insisted on handling the bills. Payments to a PR consultant. Payments to a digital reputation firm. Payments to a legal service specializing in guardianship petitions. My children weren't just smearing me. They were preparing to legally neutralize me. They wanted a conservatorship. They wanted to control me the way you control a bank account. I stared at the statement until the numbers blurred. Then I looked up at Marcus. "I want them exposed," I said. Marcus nodded once. "Then we do it right." And that was the moment I stopped feeling like a victim. Because if Ethan and Marissa were building a narrative, then they needed one thing more than money. They needed attention. They needed a reaction. They needed me to flail so they could point and say, "See, monster?" So instead, I gave them silence. And in that silence, I set a trap. Marcus helped me create a single public statement. It was short, calm. It didn't accuse. It didn't insult. It said, "I love my children. I will not discuss private family matters online. There are false claims circulating. I am working with counsel. I ask that people refrain from speculation." That was it. No emotion, no defense, just a steady refusal to fight on their stage. Ethan hated it. Marissa hated it more, because it didn't feed the fire. And when you don't feed a fire, people start looking for a new blaze. That's when my children escalated. On day 7, Marissa posted an audio clip. My voice. Cracked, weary, angry. It sounded like I was screaming at her. She captioned it. "This is what we deal with. This is why we're scared." I listened to it 3 times. Then I recognized my own words. They were from 2 years earlier. A conversation about a contractor who had overcharged me. I had been angry at the contractor, not at Marissa. The clip had been cut, stitched, and reframed. Marcus nodded when I told him. "They're desperate," he said. "They're trying to force you into public combat." Then Ethan made the move that nearly shattered me. He brought my grandchildren into it. He posted photos of them with captions like, "We're protecting them. We're breaking generational trauma. We won't let him touch them again." Touch them again. I felt my vision blur with rage so sharp it tasted metallic. I wanted to drive to Ethan's house and drag him into the street by his collar. I wanted to shout until my lungs ripped open. But Marcus held up a hand. "If you react like that," he said, "they win. They will film you. They will call the police. They will make you the monster they're selling." So I sat in my chair and squeezed my hands together until my knuckles whitened. And I whispered to the empty kitchen, "Lillian, help me stay steady." I stayed steady. Then the second hook arrived, the one I didn't expect, the one that made this more than money and reputation. It came from the housekeeper Marissa had hired. Her name was Anna. She was quiet, polite, and she always looked uncomfortable around Ethan and Marissa, like she was watching something she didn't want to understand. She knocked on my door late one evening after the smear campaign had reached full roar. When I opened it, her eyes were wet. "Mr. Kessler," she said, trembling, "I should not come, but I cannot sleep." I stepped aside and let her in. She stood in my entryway like she expected to be punished. "I hear what they say," she whispered. "About you. I know it is not true." I stared at her. "How do you know?" Anna swallowed hard. Her hands twisted together. "Because I was there," she said. "The night the night she got worse." My chest tightened. Lillian's final night had been a blur of alarms, rushed paramedics, and the helplessness of watching a person you love slip away. "What do you mean you were there?" I asked. Anna's eyes flickered toward the living room as if she expected Ethan and Marissa to appear like ghosts. "They call me that day," she said. "They say come late, extra pay. I come. Your wife is in bed. She is weak. Your son tells me to stay downstairs." My mouth went dry. "I hear your daughter in kitchen," Anna continued. "She says, if she goes now, he will be soft. He will sign. He will not fight." The room tilted. I grabbed the back of a chair to steady myself. Anna's voice cracked. "I think maybe I misunderstand," she said, tears rising. "But then I see your daughter with the pills. She pour them into the cup. She say, just enough. Your son say, stop talking. Just do it." I could barely breathe. "What pills?" I whispered. Anna shook her head. "I do not know. I clean later. I find the bottle in trash. No label." I felt cold spread through my body, slow and consuming. Lillian had been on medication, yes. Hospice care is full of controlled substances, full of schedules and dosages and careful management. But just enough wasn't a schedule. It was an intention. I forced myself to speak, each word heavy. "Anna," I said, "why are you telling me this now?" She wiped her cheeks. "Because now they say you are monster," she whispered. "But I saw their faces, that night. They did not look scared. They looked relieved." I stared at her. My children had always insisted Lillian's death was natural, inevitable, tragic. And maybe it was. Maybe Anna misunderstood. Or maybe I had been blind. I thought of Lillian's last coherent sentence to me. "Don't let them turn me into a transaction." And I realized with a sick twist in my stomach that she may have been warning me about more than paperwork. I didn't sleep that night. At dawn I called Harold. Then I called Marcus. And I said the sentence that changed the shape of everything. "I think they hastened her death." Marcus went very still. "Do you have proof?" he asked. "Not enough," I said, "but I have a witness." Marcus's jaw tightened. "Then we don't play small," he said. "We play clean. We play decisive. We play once." Because here's the problem with public opinion. You don't get infinite chances. If you drip truth slowly, people call it excuses. If you dump it in rage, people call it unstable. You need one clear strike, and you need it timed so your enemy can't bury it. So we built the strike. Not a rumor, not a smear, a documented collapse. We assembled a package: the forged hospice refunds, the foundation card charges, Ethan's text demanding I sign, Marissa's edited audio next to the original full recording, the coordinated page network Marcus had mapped, and Anna's sworn statement. Harold arranged for Anna to meet with an investigator and sign a formal affidavit. Minimal details, careful language, no wild accusations. Just what she saw and heard. We didn't call it murder. We called it suspicious behavior that warranted review. Because I was not going to hand my children the gift of claiming I was making crazy allegations. I was going to let the facts do the talking. Then Marcus built the public side. And this is where people misunderstand what manipulating opinions really means. It isn't mind control. It isn't magic. It's the difference between shouting into a storm and speaking into a microphone. Ethan and Marissa had a storm. I had a microphone. Marcus didn't buy fake followers. He didn't flood comment sections with lies. We didn't create false accusations. We didn't threaten. We did something far more effective. We made it impossible to ignore the truth. We chose a single day. We prepared 3 releases. 1. A calm video of me seated at my kitchen table, with my hands visible, my tone steady, my eyes tired but clear. 2. A public statement from my attorney confirming the financial irregularities, the misuse of foundation funds, and the existence of a formal inquiry. 3. A concise timeline graphic, dates, amounts, screenshots, and direct quotes, without insults, without emotion. We also prepared a 4th piece, one Marcus insisted on. A letter Lillian wrote. Because yes, she wrote one. Not a will, not a legal document. A letter she tucked into a cookbook on the top shelf of the pantry. I found it after her death and couldn't make myself read it at the time. I had kept it sealed, like opening it would make her death more final. I opened it that week. Inside, in her neat handwriting, she wrote, "Thomas, if you are reading this, I am gone. I need you to be brave. Ethan and Marissa are not well. They love comfort more than they love people. They will try to turn you into a story that serves them. Do not let them. Protect the grandchildren. Protect the truth. You were never the monster." I sat there with the letter shaking in my hands, tears sliding down my face, not loud, not dramatic, just the kind of tears that come when you realize someone saw the danger long before you did. Marcus looked at me and said, "This is your anchor. This is the heart. People don't follow spreadsheets. They follow meaning." So we included the letter. Not as a weapon, as a witness. And then, before release day, we did one more thing. We gave Ethan and Marissa exactly what they thought they wanted. We offered reconciliation. Harold sent them a formal invitation. A private mediation meeting, with cameras present, for everyone's protection. Neutral location, signed agreements. No surprises. Marissa accepted within an hour. Ethan accepted 15 minutes after that. They thought it was the moment I would fold. They thought it was my surrender. They didn't realize it was my stage. The mediation took place in a conference room inside Harold's building. Beige walls, cheap artwork, a long table with water bottles no one touched. Harold was there. Marcus was there. Anna was there, sitting quietly with her hands folded, looking like she wanted to disappear. Ethan walked in first, jaw tight, eyes bright with fake concern. Marissa followed, dressed like she was going to a televised interview. Soft colors, sympathetic jewelry, hair perfect. They looked at Anna and froze. Marissa recovered first. "Who is she?" Harold's voice was calm. "A witness." Ethan's eyes flicked to me. "Dad, what is this?" I didn't answer. I slid a folder across the table. Ethan opened it. His face changed, not into sadness or anger, but into something more revealing. Calculation. Marissa leaned in, scanning the pages. The foundation card statement, the refund deposits, the message logs, the map of coordinated posts. Her mouth tightened. "This is extortion," she snapped. Too fast, too sharp. Marcus's eyes narrowed slightly. Ethan swallowed and forced his voice gentle. "Dad, if you put this out, you're going to destroy the family." I finally spoke. "You did that," I said quietly. Marissa slammed her palm on the table. "You're doing this because you hate us." "No," I said. "I did this because I loved your mother." That made her flinch. Ethan's voice hardened. "You're not well. You're spiraling." Harold lifted a finger. "Let's be careful." Marissa turned on Harold. "Stay out of this." Then she looked at me with eyes that suddenly dropped all pretense. "You think people will believe you?" she hissed. "You're old. You're stubborn. You cut us out. People hate rich old men. They want a villain. You're giving them one." Ethan leaned forward, voice low, vicious. "Take the trust restrictions off. Put the money back where it belongs. or we finish this. There it was. Not fear, not trauma, a demand. Harold tapped the table. This meeting is recorded. Ethan's eyes widened. Marissa's face went pale. They both looked toward the corner where the camera sat. Simple, visible, with a red light glowing. In that instant, I saw it. The shift from predator to prey. They had walked into the room thinking they were holding a knife. Then they realized the blade was already in the air. Marissa stood abruptly. "Turn that off." Harold's voice was steady. "No." Ethan's nostrils flared. "Dad, you're making a mistake." I looked at him. My son, the child I once carried on my shoulders at county fairs, the boy I taught to drive, the young man who hugged his mother with real tenderness before greed hollowed him out. And I said, "I already made my mistake. I trusted you." Marissa's eyes flashed. "You're going to regret this," she hissed. Then she did something that told me everything. She looked at Anna and said coldly, "You'll lose your job for this." Anna flinched. I stood, slowly, carefully. My knees complained, but I didn't rush. I wanted the cameras to capture the steadiness. I looked at my children and said, "This is your last chance to stop. You can walk away now. You can stop this campaign. You can let me live the rest of my life quietly." Ethan's mouth twisted. "Or what?" I nodded once. "Or you meet the truth," I said. Marissa laughed sharp and ugly. "Truth?" she spat. "Truth is whatever people believe. And they believe us." She turned to leave. Ethan followed. But they were wrong about one thing. They believed they controlled the timing. They didn't. Because while they were walking out, Marcus pressed one button on his phone. Release day became release minute. My video went live on every platform at once. The attorney statement posted simultaneously. The timeline graphic hit community pages, not through anonymous spam, but through credible voices. Local veterans groups, charity partners, business associations, church networks that had known me long before Ethan and Marissa decided I was a monster. And the final piece, Lillian's letter, was posted last. Not as drama, as gravity. Within 10 minutes the comments shifted, not all of them. Some people still wanted the villain. But enough people saw the receipts, saw the calm delivery, saw the direct proof of manipulation and financial abuse, that the story cracked. The first crack is always the loudest. Because once doubt enters, the mob starts turning on itself. Sponsors began asking Ethan questions. Marissa's followers began asking why she had used edited audio. A journalist, one of the ones camped outside my gate, requested an interview with Harold instead. The foundation board issued a statement distancing itself from Ethan and Marissa pending review. Then the most satisfying part happened. Not because it was cruel, but because it was inevitable. Ethan went live. He tried to regain control. He spoke fast, voice tight, eyes darting. He said I was weaponizing private information. He said I was gaslighting. He said the refunds were misunderstandings. He said the foundation charges were authorized. He tried to spin it, but something had changed. He was no longer the wounded son. He was a man caught with his hand in the wrong pocket, and the public can smell that faster than they can smell truth. When the local station aired my calm video alongside Ethan's frantic live stream, the contrast did more damage than any insult ever could. The next morning, an investigator from the county called Harold. Not Adult Protective Services, a financial crimes unit. Not because I begged them, because the foundation's credit card company flagged the charges after the story broke, and the board froze the account. Then the hospice provider, yes, the same one, requested documentation. The refunds became a case. Anna's affidavit became a catalyst. And Ethan and Marissa's guardianship petition, filed quietly, thinking it would slip through, was suddenly in the light. You want to know what public light does to quiet legal violence? It kills it. Harold didn't need to spend hours in court. He didn't need dramatic speeches. The petition was withdrawn within 48 hours because Ethan and Marissa realized they weren't going to get a conservatorship. They were going to get a subpoena. Then came the part that felt like breathing again. My neighbors stopped avoiding my mailbox. The church deacon called and said, "I'm sorry we doubted you." A mother from the local school emailed, "My children shared that post. I corrected them. I'm sorry." People began apologizing. Not because people are noble, but because people don't like being on the wrong side of a clear truth. And then my grandchildren called. Not Ethan's oldest. He's too young to understand the war around him. But Marissa's teenage son, Caleb. He called from a number I didn't recognize. When I answered, his voice was shaking. "Grandpa," he whispered. My throat tightened. "Yes." There was a pause, then a swallow. "They told us you were dangerous," he said. "But the video, you didn't look dangerous. You looked tired." I closed my eyes. "I am tired," I admitted. He exhaled. "I'm sorry," he said, and the apology sounded like pain. "Are you safe?" I asked. He hesitated. "Mom is angry." "Angry at me?" "Angry at everyone," he said. I sat very still. "Caleb," I said gently, "listen to me. None of this is your fault. Do you understand? None." He sniffed. "I miss Grandma," he whispered. So did I. I wanted to tell him everything, that his mother's choices had created this storm, that his uncle's greed had turned them all into collateral, but I didn't. Because children don't need revenge stories, they need stability. So I said, "I miss her too." And I let him talk until his breathing steadied. When the call ended, I sat at my kitchen table and looked at the empty chair where Lillian used to drink tea. I whispered, "I kept them from turning you into a transaction." But the war wasn't over yet. Ethan and Marissa didn't crumble quietly. People like that rarely do. They tried to counterattack with fresh lies. They accused me of orchestrating a smear campaign against them. They claimed Anna was bribed. They claimed Harold was manipulating me. Then Marcus did something I will always be grateful for. He didn't respond with more chaos. He responded with one sentence, posted publicly from his verified business account. "We will not argue with documented evidence. All claims can be reviewed in full context in the files provided." That was it. No insults. No emotion. Just an invitation to look. And when people look, lies suffocate. Within a week, Ethan's employer placed him on leave. Marissa's family advocacy partnership ended quietly, with a short statement about values. The PR firm Ethan hired terminated their contract for non-payment. Because the foundation card was frozen and Ethan hadn't planned on using his own money to destroy his father. Then came the day Ethan showed up at my gate. No cameras, no performance. Just him, standing on my driveway in the winter sunlight, looking older than he had any right to look. I watched him through the front window before I opened the door. I didn't want to, but I did. Because I needed to look at him one last time and know whether there was anything left worth saving. When I opened the door, Ethan didn't step forward. He didn't smile. He didn't cry. He said, "You ruined us." I stared at him. "You ruined yourselves," I replied. His jaw clenched. "You could have handled this privately." "I tried," I said. "You answered with a public lynching." Ethan's eyes flashed. "We needed what was ours." I felt something in me settle, heavy and final. "Nothing was yours," I said quietly. "Not the money, not the house, not my name." He swallowed. His voice cracked. "What do you want?" I leaned against the door frame. My body was tired. My mind was sharp. "I want you away from the grandchildren," I said. "I want you to stop using them as shields. I want you to stop feeding them lies. Ethan's face twisted. You can't take them. I'm not taking them, I said. I'm protecting them. He stared at me, breathing hard. Then he said, low and venomous, You really are a monster. And for the first time I smiled, not with humor, not with joy, but with the kind of calm that comes when someone finally reveals their true belief. No, I said. I'm what you feared. I'm the man you couldn't control. Ethan stepped back, as if the words had physical weight. You'll die alone, he spat. Maybe I will. But I will die with my name intact. I will die with my wife's letter honored. I will die knowing my grandchildren's future is protected from the kind of greed that eats families alive. Ethan turned and walked away. I watched him go. Then I closed the door. Inside, my house was still quiet. But it was no longer the quiet of drowning. It was the quiet of survival. In the months that followed, the investigations moved in their slow, grinding way. I didn't parade it. I didn't celebrate publicly. I didn't turn it into a spectacle. I let the system do its work, and I focused on what mattered. I restructured the trusts again, adding safeguards. I arranged for independent trustees. I ensured that any funds for the grandchildren could be used for education, housing, medical needs, but could not be siphoned by their parents. I expanded the scholarship fund. I visited the foster center Lillian used to donate to and sat with children who looked at me with the same wary hope I saw in my own grandchildren now. And I learned something in my 70s that I wish I had learned in my 40s. Some people will call you a monster the moment you stop feeding them. Let them. Because the word monster is often just a tantrum thrown by someone who lost their grip on you. Ethan and Marissa wanted the world to see me as a villain so they could take what they wanted without guilt. Instead, the world saw them, not as tragic victims, as architects of their own collapse. And if that sounds harsh, if it sounds cold, understand this. I did not destroy my children. I removed the mask. They did the rest themselves. In the end, that's the only kind of revenge that feels clean. The kind where you don't have to invent a lie. You just hold up a mirror and let the monster introduce itself.
My grandpa's worst really happened. I believe him. If you want more true tales like this, hit subscribe.